I met Kelsi about 3 years ago now, and she's been a student, she's been an incredible advocate, and an amazing role model for many other students. So you're going to hear from Kelsi next, and she'll share her story, but we're also incredibly proud of you at Purdue, and you're a fantastic representative of our university and of your community. So with that, let's welcome Kelsi German.
Good morning. My name is Kelsi German. My husband's over there complaining because that's not my name anymore, but that's my name. I'm here to talk about my sister. I talk to high school and colleges quite often, and it always amazes me just how many students are out there and want to help us in so many different ways. So thank you for being here and listening. I'm from a small town called DELPHI in Indiana, about 30 minutes east of Purdue, so not too far. But every time I go and talk to colleges or high schools that are near where I live, every single person in the room is amazed by this story. Most of them haven't heard of it, which always amazes me because we're 30 minutes away. So like Professor Hans said, I am a graduate of Purdue. I studied forensic psychology. I started doing that after my sister passed away. She passed away in our hometown about 6 years ago. So after her death, I started looking for answers. I was shy and quiet. I hated public speaking. I still don't love it. But we do what we have to do for answers. So first, I'm going to tell you about Abigail. We call her Abby. She moved to Delphi from Michigan, probably in 6th grade, somewhere around there is what I remember. And she was always at my house. Like, she was always there, but she was very shy and quiet. She didn't talk too much when I was around, but she was always across the hallway in my sister's room, giggling and laughing all the time. I never heard them quiet from across the hallway. I always had to yell at them and say, guys, you have to shut up for just 5 minutes. I just need to study for whatever test was going on, or probably Spanish class or whatnot. She was my sister's best friend, and they had been friends since she moved here. So when Abby moved to Indiana, Libby was the person that would walk up to the stranger in the classroom and say, hey, let's be friends, let's talk, let's do something together. You'll see in a minute when I talk about my sister that they did pretty much everything together. All of these sports that you see, they played saxophone together. They had a love for people and animals and art and music. They were just the best people, and they were so opposite in so many ways that just kind of lit up the room and just brought out the best in both of them. So then my sister, Liberty, she was my best friend. We called her Libby. She was born and raised in Delphi. We lived in this town. It was less than 3,000 people. It still is, but we have tourists now, which is a fun time for all of us. She still is the bravest and smartest woman now that I know. And I'll tell you a little bit of why later. But she was the most outgoing, loving person you would ever meet. She also played saxophone. She did art, music, and we had a dog named Tucker. We got Tucker about 2 weeks before my sister died, and if Libby had the choice, our dog would have been named Tyler after the drummer in 21 Pilots. But I said, no, that doesn't work, and Tucker definitely fits better. So February 13th is the day my life changed forever. I want to note this picture of Abby on the left for you guys that my sister took the day they went to this bridge. We'll talk a little bit more about that picture later, but it is very important. So February 13th, 2017 was a snow makeup day. That might not be something that's common. You guys might not know what that is because we're in Arizona, but that's basically just a built-in day where if it doesn't snow, we get the day off. We just get to hang out at home and have fun. That year they started e-learning, so we actually had to do homework anyway, which sucked, but Abby and Libby made the most of it. Abby stayed the night the day before and they just hung out. They were doing art projects. My sister was working on this desk. It was a super old desk. It'd been in our family forever, and she wanted to make it into some like beautiful artwork. It had black legs now, and she was going to put music notes all over the top. So they'd started working on that morning. When I was finally up and getting ready, I had to go to work. I was going to my boyfriend at the time's house that day, because we worked at the same place. And I was going to hang out with him, and Libby asked me to take them to High Bridge, which is the bridge you see in the middle. I dropped them off at the area on the right. So this is a place that we would go and hang out. We would go and take pictures. These pictures look a little scary, but I promise it's not that scary. This is a very high up bridge. It's about, I think, 67 feet off the ground. It's an old abandoned railroad trestle. And they had geocaches hidden at this bridge, so we would go there, find the geocaches, do the treasure hunt, and then take pictures and go home. So this was a place that me and Libby had frequented. Abby, I don't think had been there, but maybe once or twice. And they just went there to enjoy the beautiful day. It was unreasonably warm for February, warm as in 60 degrees. So you guys would probably be wearing a sweater, but we were not, because it had been winter for so long, it had been so cold, so all we really needed was a light jacket, which you see Abby wearing. After Libby asked me, I told her I had plans, so I couldn't go with her, but if she found a ride, I would drop her off and she would find a ride home. So that is what happened. She told me that she had found a ride home. I took them to the bridge around 1:30 and dropped them off. That would be the last time I would see my sister alive or in any capacity for a week. So the next day, so that evening, actually, I was sitting at my boyfriend's house. We were talking. Chase was getting ready for work, and I was sitting down watching a movie with his dad and his sister. And my phone rang. It was across the room. I didn't answer it the first time. I was like, it's probably nobody important. I'm just going to work. I'm at my boyfriend's house. Nobody really is paying attention to what I'm doing, so why do I need to answer it? Then it rang the second time, and I got up. I picked up my phone, and it was my grandma. And we lived with my grandparents at the time, so it was normal for her to call and check in, see where I was. But when I answered, she was frantic, which was also very normal. She's the person that freaks out over everything. I just thought she was over-exaggerating. She freaked out and said, Kelsi, have you seen Libby? Have you talked to her? She hasn't answered her phone. And your dad's there to pick her up. And this is around 4 o'clock. That's super abnormal for Libby. If she knew that somebody was coming to pick her up, she would have answered. She always had her phone in her hand. She was making, I believe it was Musical.lys at the time, all the time, always taking pictures. She was always texting someone. So it didn't make sense why she wasn't answering. So I got up, I said I'll be there in 10 minutes, and I drove to the bridge. I had to call off work and find a replacement before I could go over there. And so I did that. By the time I got to the bridge, my entire family was there searching. We'd walked down this trail. It's a super long trail, so if you go to the part where I dropped them off at that sign, there's like a gate there in this picture that wasn't there at the time, and it was a very long walk, I believe half a mile, to get back to the bridge where the girls had been going. So we actually got to the bridge. I walked across it. Actually, I say that I ran across it, but I would never cross that bridge if I didn't have to. So these railroad trestles are so old and worn out that some of them had fallen. So a normal-sized person could fall through one of these trestles. Even like where Abby is standing, there's a big gap not too far from her in that picture. They're very large and very scary. Somebody definitely could have fallen. So our fear initially was that one of them had fallen. Libby wasn't answering her phone, so we thought maybe she dropped her phone over the edge of the bridge, and then they went to get it. They went over the bridge to the private driveway that's underneath there, and they got hurt trying to get down there to get to her phone. That's kind of where our initial thoughts were going. So our search as a family went on until about 5:30 p.m. At 5:30, we all went to the police station, where we were able to file a report, but law enforcement told us that the girls probably ran away. They were mad, they were angry, they were bad teenagers. They wanted to be rebels and get away from us for whatever reason, so there was nothing they could do. There were people saying that there were sightings of them at a gym not far away, but they would have had to walk over an hour to get to the nearest gym that they were saying that they were at. So we sat in the police station all night as searches were going on. It wasn't an organized search. Police were out there. That evening, a lot of our family, our friends, people from around our town were there, but it wasn't set up and organized, and it was very dangerous territory, so it was hard to get around. It's very hilly there, I guess, compared to our normal cornfields and soybeans is very hilly. So it was hard for people to search and see anything safely. So around 10 o'clock, 10:30, law enforcement called the search off. They said it was too dark, they couldn't get lights there, no one could see, so they had to call the police search off. But our friends and our family continued to search out there throughout the night, and nothing came up. We weren't able to find anything. There were no signs of the girls anywhere. People had crossed the bridge, they'd gone in the woods near it, and nobody was able to find any idea that the girls were even in the area. So the next day, the organized search was started. Law enforcement took us all to our fire station, and at the fire station, we were separated into groups that went all over town, and crazy locations I don't understand why we were there. So part of us were on one side of town. There were people at the bridge all over the woods on this side. There were people in the cornfields that surrounded it. 2 towns over, we were all over the place. My group, though, was one of the groups that went to Monon High Bridge. So we went to the bridge, and then our group actually separated into 2 groups. My group went over Monon High Bridge, and the other group, where my dad and my other sister were, actually went in the woods closer to where the girls were found. These are just some pictures I took off of Google. They all came from like local news stations, just showing the area we were in. We were all over the place, but once my group, actually half of my group, because some of us were very scared to cross the bridge, once we crossed the bridge, we searched for what seemed like forever in this area of trees that you see just below the circle where it says Monon High Bridge. There's tons of land. We searched the trees for what felt like 3 hours, I think. And then as soon as we decided we didn't find anything and that we needed to go somewhere else to another location to look, we heard somebody yell from just a little ways away, it was about 12:30, that they'd found a shoe. So since I was there, me and my family were around this area, they'd asked me what shoes the girls were wearing. And I knew the picture of Abby that my sister had posted the day before. Abby had black Converse on. So I told them that. I wasn't sure what my sister was wearing. But after the shoe was found, the same person actually opened up his cell phone camera and scanned the woods across the river and found what he described as 2 bodies laying on the other side of the creek. And so at that point, everybody around me was saying, it's nothing, you don't know who they are, let's not get freaked out. But we're in a town of less than 3,000 people. I know who's over there. You aren't going to keep me from freaking out by telling me that. It's not going to calm me down. But one of my grandfathers was also on that side of the bridge, and so I saw him and automatically went into protect my family mode. I thought he was going to have a heart attack or something, and I needed to save him. So I went to him, and we actually went to his house, where then we later got the phone call that we needed to go to the command center, which is the fire station or City Hall. At City Hall, we were all brought into this big room, and they notified us that 2 girls were found, not too far from the bridge, just about half a mile from the beginning of the bridge to where they were found, but that they couldn't tell us who it was at that point. They brought us all into these rooms afterwards to be interrogated and questioned, and we were all separated and brought in to talk to FBI agents who I'd found out are not very nice at all, actually quite awful. But they were just doing their jobs. And this is kind of where my memory mostly stops. I don't really remember the days and weeks after that. I know the funeral happened. I know we went to vigils. My one memory me and my grandma always talk about is the vigil, because there were these 4 or 5 girls from a Catholic church not too far away that brought us all lilies. And they made it a point to stand next to us and make sure that we were okay the entire night. So now is when I can tell you a lot of information. We actually have a lot more information now than I did 9 months ago. Can we go to the next slide, actually? Thank you. So prior to December 2021, we had very limited information. So very early on in 2017, this picture of a man on the bridge was released with an audio clip. At the very beginning, we thought that this came from a trail cam, or maybe somebody had a camera there, some witness was there to take pictures. But later on, we found out that this audio and video actually came from my sister's cell phone. So I don't know if we're able to play the clip that's in the very top corner up there, but it's a clip of the man talking, saying, "Guy," or "down the hill." He just says "down the hill," and he's walking towards the girls at the end of the bridge. And we found out that my sister took that as he was telling them to go towards the private driveway down the hill at the end of High Bridge. That was also the same time they released this image. The first sketch is the older man on the left. He is very much older looking, he's very shaggy, he has hair, he has a hat, and then they did a big flip on us. So in April of 2019, they shared the new sketch. It's a very younger looking man, and the only description they give us, reasoning behind this, is that they advanced technology and knowledge somewhere in the 2 years that they had shared the first one, which was very defeating to us because at this point we had been sharing a flyer all over the US. We'd sent our flyer to every campground in the US. We'd had it at every single rest stop in Indiana. We had it everywhere. We'd shared at every single police department we could. We'd shared it as much as possible. We wanted it everywhere. We wanted his face plastered. And now we had to restart and start looking for a younger looking man that was closer to my age. At that time, they had more of a description. Now we have no description. He's just a white male. But at that time, they were saying he was between 18 and 40. and also that they were looking for specific things that they had gained knowledge of. So now they were looking for the driver of a vehicle that was parked at the old CPS building, which is about half a mile from the location where I dropped the girls off on the same road. This car was there between noon and 5, and that was all the information they gave us about it. They never talked about it again, actually, in any of their press conferences. They just say that it's there and we need information on it. In that press conference, where they released the second sketch, they also emphasized that there's only one person in the video and the audio. Because I guess people were saying that the guys that they released later and the down the hill part sounded like two different people. I think it sounds the same, but they say it doesn't. And they also said that the person in this video is believed to have ties in Delphi or is from Delphi, which makes sense because Highbridge is not an easy place to find unless you've been to the area. You can go to the next slide. So as of September 2022, we actually have a lot of new information that's been released. Not all of it's from law enforcement, but HLN did release new information about the video earlier this year in February. It all came from a document that they received. They can't confirm where this information came from, just that they have this information and they wanted to make it public. So HLN put out that the timestamp of the video was 2:13. And if you remember the picture of Abby in the beginning that my sister took, it was taken at 2:07. So a very short time gap between Abby crossing the bridge and the man that we call Bridge Guy crossing the bridge and encountering them. The video that my sister took was 43 seconds long, but law enforcement won't confirm if there's more video or if there's more stuff that happens in there, or if Bridge Guy shows up more. He might talk more in the video, but we can't confirm it. Also, they put out that guys down the hill is said at the end of the video, which is important because that means as soon as he says it, my sister cut it off, and there might not be any more from that particular video, but there could be more information elsewhere. But none of this is confirmed by law enforcement. What is confirmed by law enforcement is the fictitious Instagram account that they released in December, I believe. This was uncovered during the course of their investigation. The Instagram account's username is Anthony_shots. It was active between 2016 and 2017, and they could have been using other platforms. So we know that he was on Instagram and Snapchat, but there's possibly other like talk to stranger apps, other social media accounts like Facebook, maybe Twitter, that he could have potentially been using. So the person who created this account was using it to tell young girls that he was wealthy, he had a lot of money, he owned a lot of cars. You'll see pictures of the cars that he says he has in a minute. But he was using these things to solicit images, obtain addresses, and try to meet young girls. What we know of is around Indiana, but possibly elsewhere. So this is just some screenshots of pictures that law enforcement released. So these are all just things that this person was sharing with young girls. There's a couple Snapchat pictures that he sent to girls, a couple pictures of wads of money, which you could look up that picture and it's obviously from Google, but they were 13 and 14, so I try to give them a little bit of grace. And also a screenshot of him buying very expensive clothing. So he was very much trying to get these young girls to believe that he was wealthy, that he was around here, that he wanted to make them feel special, he wanted to be around them, and obviously just enticing them with all of these cool things that made them feel really good about themselves. But the person in these images was cleared and confirmed that it's not the male model. I believe he's a cop in Alaska, actually. He has done a couple interviews, but he's a super nice guy. He has kids, and he just feels so bad that his images were used in this kind of way. There's also a picture of his Instagram account. I don't think he has 59 followers, so as time goes on, people realize what happened. They have been unfollowing this account, I guess. So he just is slowly losing people, which just brings me a little bit of joy. So then that takes me to my advocacy. So I started really putting myself out there in 2018 after I went to CrimeCon. I started meeting a bunch of family members who had been through what I'd been through. And one of them told me that I really needed to start pushing on social media, so I did. Her name was Michelle. She's in one of the pictures up there. She's a beautiful person. She lost her sister about 42 years ago. And so after I started doing all of these events and started talking to people, I started meeting more people who would get me more awesome opportunities. So this is just a really short list of people I've talked to. It's nowhere near where I am now, but and there's probably people I wish I could take off. But I just keep talking, even though I don't want to. I keep contacting people. I follow random people sometimes just to get the word out, but that brought us national and international news opportunities and chances to share the story, which has really led us to where we are in the case. And it really keeps our investigators working, because they hate when I get up here and say that I'm really frustrated with them, and they hate when I say that guy with the widow's peak better be working, because I know he's watching this, and so if I make fun of him, he'll call me later and give me an update. And so that's what I do when I really need answers. So I know all of that work I've been doing, even, can you go to the next slide? As I've been working so hard and doing all of this really good work, I found that there are a lot of challenges. So our main challenge really is armchair detectives, which not all of them are bad. Some of them are really great, but they send comments like these that kind of put a wrench in our day, and they aren't helpful. They mostly are not like this, but most of the time this is what we get, and it's just people making theories and trying to solve the case and make it the best story they can. But it's only really a handful. And then there's leaks. So lately we've had a lot of people that come to me and say they have an anonymous source, and they end up sharing information such as transcripts and random theories that they say is law enforcement person has given them. And that just is, not only could it hurt the case, but it's emotional for us to have to deal with. You can skip to the last slide. So lastly is how you can help. So remember that the people getting up here and talking today and everybody out there helping, they're real people behind these cases. And help them in any way you can, but do it ethically and helpful. And then all of the other awesome ways to help other people is also up there. So yeah, thanks for being here and being willing to help people like me. Okay, so I think I'll tell one from our childhood, because earlier I mentioned how brave my sister was, and this is just kind of my favorite memory to think of when I think of that. I don't know if you remember those like pink Barbie Jeeps that we used to have when we were kids. We used to have one, and we drove it around our backyard. We'd go around the tree and make like an obstacle course and have to go around them. We had this huge backyard with a huge tree. And I always drove because I was the oldest, and I told her that I was going to have my license first, so I had to learn to drive first. And so we're driving around this tree, and she's sitting in like the passenger seat. I was probably 6 at the time, so she would have been 3 or 4. And we got up to the tree, and there was like a little, now it was very little, but then it was huge. It was a snake going towards the tree, and I almost ran into the tree because I was so scared. And Libby got out of the Barbie Jeep, picked the snake up, and just held it in front of my face and was like, Kelsi, this is not that bad. You can hold it too. And I looked at her and I said, absolutely not, and drove the Barbie Jeep the other way. And she ran all the way over to the garage and threw it at me. And I don't know why I remember it so well at 6, but I just remember her being so brave, holding that snake, and me just being terrified. And that describes us perfectly up until she passed away. And then as to respecting families, I'd say, remember that we're real people when you're sharing content. Think about what you're sharing, and if it doesn't seem like it's right, you think it's doing more harm than good, don't consume it, don't share it. Just make sure that it's respecting us as family members and the victims as well.
Tell me what you need, tell me what you need, tell me.